Welcome to What's New in Reaper 6.58 and 6.59. In this video, we'll look at changes to the region render matrix, video, the other stuff. Let's take a look. So I'd like to start off this one with some changes from Reaper 6.58. Support rendering region matrix via master. If render bounds set to selected regions and no regions are selected, render all regions. Improve render speed when rendering stems or regions via master. So I have a project here with several layers of sounds. I just want you to imagine that these are layers for different assets that you would render out for your sound library for a game, that sort of thing. And the areas that I would want to render are selected by the regions. What's the best way to get each of these items within each of these time selections rendered out as separate files? So I have each separate layer that can be adjusted in the game engine, but I'm not rendering out, let's say, 6 files here for this area. I'm only rendering 1 file out, because that's what I want. And also, how do I get this so that effects on the master track, like mid-side adjustment, bit of EQ shaping, or stealth limiter. These are all things that I would want to do in as few steps as possible. So we'll start off by opening up the render window. And from the source, I can choose region render matrix or region render matrix via master. That's the new one here. Via master means that it's any effects on the master track and any routing that's happening on this will be applied to these rendered files. Then we need to open up the region matrix. Across the top is our list of regions. In this case, I want regions 43 to 54. I never named them. And I want to render out anything within the time selections or within the regions for the punch, transient, and lows track. So any effects on these tracks will be rendered. If there's multiple items within the region bounds, then they will become one file. And if there's effects on the edit track or on the master track, that will be applied there. Via master is different from the master mix because master mix just plays all tracks. Via master will play these kind of as if they were soloed, and then any routing through folders, parallel sends, and the master track effects will all apply to those new items. So I've got my region render matrix set up the way I want, but we do need to use the region manager to actually select which of the regions are going to be rendered. I'll just scroll down to find my region 43 to 54. I just shift click on those. And you may notice here in the timeline that these regions are selected. They have a square edge rather than the default rounded edge. So they're selected versus unselected right beside. So I'll select all these. And I can close this window. And I can close this window. I can see here 36 files will be rendered based on my settings there. They can get the name from the parent, then their own track name, and then the region. And so that results in edit punch 43, edit transient 43, edit lows 43. Then it goes to the next region and it just repeats. I'll just make a folder for this and then render this out. It goes very quickly because there's not a lot of effects in here or anything like that. And well, this is a Mac Studio, so it's pretty damn fast. Yeah, it's processing that, and this is much faster than the old way would have to solo each of these tracks so that they go through the upstream effects. And then there's all the rendered files that I just did. And that whole process took less than a minute for 36 files. So the render matrix was great already. This adds another layer of additional functionality to reduce the number of steps you need to do manually. You don't need to solo tracks. You don't need to mute things that you don't want to hear. So pretty much the render matrix does it all now. Really cool. And the change that they made for the render speed, basically it just turns off processing on all tracks that would not affect the rendering of the selected items, the selected regions, stems, whatever it is. Rather than processing it as if the whole mix is running, it can just turn out everything else off, runs faster, turns it all back on, that sort of thing. Pretty cool. Up next, we're looking at a couple new actions. Actions to move copy contents of time selection to edit cursor. I want to take this section and then copy it somewhere else. Let's say at bar 41. I'm going to open up the action list. I'll look for copy contents. And there it is. Time selection, copy contents of time selection to edit cursor, moving later items. This will take this section, copy it over to bar 41, just like that. Yeah, let's take this section here. Let's do that one more time so you can see how this works along with like a ripple edit. So ripple editing is off on the project, but if I run this, that effectively ripple edits the whole project and repeats that section there. Okay, and I'll undo that back to the original state. Now, what if we take this section here, park my edit cursor at bar 41, and instead of copy contents, we're going to move contents. And now I'm looking for move contents of time selection to edit cursor, moving later items. When you're looking through here, be careful not to grab this remove contents. Move, not remove. And so if I'm moving this section within the time selection over to bar 41, looks like this. And that's very similar to how moving regions works. Like that. But now you can do it without creating the regions first. You just need a time selection and a couple of actions. So no dragging is required anymore, and this is a huge help for visually impaired users. So this is fantastic, and I think this will also be helpful for scripting. Only other thing of note here is that this doesn't care what tracks you have selected or items you have selected or where the edit cursor is in terms of which tracks it's on. It will always do the entire project within that time selection. Whatever items are active there, it will copy or move them to the new location. For the batch converter, add menu item to display converted file properties. So I've got a file here and I will convert this. So I'll convert that. It says done. If I right click, I have a couple options here. Show input media source properties. That brings up this window. It was a 44.1 single channel file. If I right click, show output media source properties, that's the new one. Now we can see that this is a 48K sample rate, single channel, 24-bit, and it also adds in a couple bits of metadata there. Here's a Mac exclusive feature. When using default system output device, detect device changes, example, from plugging in headphones. So if you've got your Reaper preferences set to system default device, or in my case, Mac Studio speakers, and then I plug in my headphones, it will automatically switch to the headphones rather than being silent output, which was how it was before. So a very small thing, but if you work on a Mac and you're going between the system speakers and headphones, it's just a little bit smoother now going between those two devices. Up next is changes to the Media Explorer. Actions to sort file list by specific columns. Display favorite state during searches. Support adding user-defined tags. User-defined tags will be cached locally and can be written to media files for some media types. So up first was an action. So we'll open up the action list to make sure that the section is Media Explorer. I guess we'll just search for sort maybe. There it is. So sort file list by column, artist, album, BPM. Yeah, all of the columns here, including the user added metadata column up to 10. So that's sorting the list. Let's say we'll sort this by bits and bitrate. And so that's organize that. Let's do sort by description. So I was a little confused by the user tag function. I think I understand now what's happened here. So back in Reaper version 5.11, I remember there was a custom tag, add custom editable database tag. And now I guess custom tags will work anytime. So right now I'm in a file view, not in the database. And so I have a custom tags column here. This is different from user columns. But yeah, so custom tags there. And if I'm in a database, I also have custom tags here. I haven't used these in a while. I don't know if I have any of them in my database being used. These ones say stereo. That was probably from the 5.11 tutorial. So yeah, custom tags seem to be anytime within the Media Explorer rather than just once you've created a database. I think that's what's different here. And as I mentioned before, we can sort by the custom tags list now as well. For razor edits, add mouse modifiers to select razor edit area and time selection together in track, media item, and media item edge context. Preferences, editing behavior, and mouse modifiers. So for the track context or the item context, let's just look at track for now. Let's do an option left drag for create razor edit area and set time selection. So this is an interesting one here. So I'll apply that. So this is going to work on any empty area of a track. I'm going to option left drag. That's creating a time selection and a razor edit area. And the benefit of that is that the edit cursor and play cursor moves to the start of a time selection automatically if you have that preference selected, which is move edit cursor to start of time selection on time selection change. So if I do a regular razor edit without that new function, this is just creating a razor edit. My play cursor or edit cursor is still in the same position it was. But if I do this new one, which was I assigned to option left drag, that is moving my edit cursor to the start of the razor edit area. It's setting my time selection. And yeah, so I can preview this area, set render bounds to this, that sort of thing. For recent projects, add option to control whether projects are added to recent list when loading. Add option to disable save copy of project being added to recent list. Add option to have old project removed from recent list when using save new version of project. And on Windows, add projects to system-wide recent documents list on save. So we may as well look at this on Windows. So we'll go to the preferences and go to general and recent project list display. Add to recent list when loading projects. Add to recent list when using save copy of project. And then remove old project from recent list when using save as new version of project. I haven't used this system in a while, but if I loaded a project and then saved it, these are just options for like, do we want to have these in here twice or not? That kind of thing. All right, so I'll just open a project. And if I do file, save new version of project, and then file recent projects, I've got these in here twice, 2 different versions. If I use this function, remove old project from recent list when using save new version of project, and apply that, and then file recent projects. I do have 2 of these, but I'll just save this one more time. And now this is TMS 84 recording 2, file recent projects. And so the dash one or _1 project is not there in the list anymore. Just a couple new options for keeping that list clean if you want. And I'm on Windows 11 here, so if I right-click on the dock icon for Reaper, I can see my recent projects here, and because I saved a few today, I'm seeing those automatically up here at the top. So these 2 new projects were created today, and they're at the top of the list. Back to the topic of rendering, always display 1 momentary loudness measurement and 1 short-term loudness measurement in HTML charts. Optionally display project regions markers in HTML charts. And remove option to render WMV or WMA files because there's no reason to use those formats anymore. So I'll render this time selection here. And so what was the thing? Recent render, display statistics for most recent render. And here it is. And here are my regions and markers. And in this case, I just had the one region because I did a region time selection that included a region. Let's render this again. I'll do a time selection that's longer. Render. Clip 2. Render. Show the chart. And there we go. There's our LUFS. There's our project regions and project markers. There we go. So nice update for the statistics. This has come a long way since the first version. This whole section with the graph, the regions, markers, all this stuff is really cool to see. And back to Windows, if we are rendering out in WMF with the Windows Media format, they took away the option to use WMA as a render format because MPEG-4 is just much better. No one's really using WMA or WMV anymore. So yeah, that's all good. There's a couple of changes to video from the previous update, 6.58. Support embedding multi-channel audio in MPEG-4 video when using WMF. Support rendering video only or audio only MP4 when using WMF. Support rendering multi-channel AAC when using AV Foundation. When rendering MPEG-4, use MP4, M4V, or M4A extension by default, depending on whether audio video streams exist. Improve normalization speed when rendering audio-only MPEG-4. And there's even more video changes. Allow encoding video-only MPEG-4 MOV when using AV Foundation. Improve FFmpeg bitrate controls for various codecs. Support passing FFmpeg command line options directly when rendering. And simplify WMF encoding settings. So let's first look at embedding multi-channel audio in an MPEG-4. So that's as simple as selecting 6-channel output, MPEG-4, H.264, AAC. Let's set this to higher bitrate, like 256. And that should render out a 6-channel AAC embedded into a video. Render one file. And I don't know where that went. And we can see from the properties that this video file has 6 channels of audio. If I import this back into the project, what do we get? We get 6 layers of audio. There's nothing in that clip to begin with. That's why we don't see waveforms. But if this was a surround sound mix, that would be one way to render that. And back to Mac, the multi-channel thing should be basically the same. Just set this to like 6 or 8 channels, and then the audio should render that out as a multi-channel file. And switching over to the FFmpeg encoder, if we set our video to none, we can see that the render to preview is set to M4A now. And let's put this back on H.264 and go to, for the audio side, change this from AAC to none. And then we see M4V because it's just a video stream, no audio. And now we have these new options for FFmpeg commands. So there's a couple preset ones here, all frames, H.264 high quality, H.264 small size. And for audio, MP3 VBR and VBR lowest. I think they do need to be matched with MP3 to make this work right. Yeah, I mean, play around with that. So generally using the Windows Media encoder is probably faster. Potentially you get a better render or at least have more options with the FFmpeg encoder, but maybe not. This is something that I don't have a ton of experience on this because I'm not making videos on Windows right now. So share your findings in the official Reaper forum. So that's it for this edition of What's New in Reaper. Hopefully this has been helpful. Hopefully this has cleared up a lot of confusion about various new features in Reaper. There's lots of little changes. There's also a ton of bug fixes that I didn't mention. Fixes and changes to other areas where I have absolutely no experience with Reaper. But yeah, check the changelog, check the user guide, and yeah, come back for the next video. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Follow me on Facebook and Twitter. Support the Reaper blog through Patreon, and buy a t-shirt. See you later.